being admitted to a nursing home. Um, and they think that there's abuse by a daughter taking money out of her accounts financially because the mom has dementia and the mom clearly doesn't know what's going on. And the daughter is the kind of like the person for everything, kind of takes care of a lot of things for the mom. And so I'm getting a subpoena. So the district attorney's office calls me and he's asking me some questions. And at first I'm being vague because I don't have a legal document to really say anything to this guy, even just because he works in the district attorney's office, I can't say anything. So I told him he needs to provide me a subpoena, which he finally got to me. And then I called him and he says, we talked about a few things. And I said, I've known this client for many, many years and I've not seen any problems here, but I will, how about this? I said, you give me a subpoena for it. I'll give you the information, but request in the subpoena that you want our opinion at Affinity Asset Management as to what we see in the history of the accounts, withdrawal history, random withdrawals, monthly withdrawals, just anything. And so we did all that and got the subpoena and we started talking about it. And I saw no abuse, but is it supposed to pop up on my feed here? Right there. There you go. And so long story short, the daughter, at least that we can tell, hasn't been taking any money out of any of her investment accounts or retirement accounts, nothing like that. Now, I can't speak to the bank accounts or something like this, but she's been, she's only 73 for Pete's sake. She's been dealing with dementia for like 4 years. And I mean, this hit her in her late 60s and quality of life has drastically changed. So thank goodness she's got long-term care insurance and then she's got some money to self-pay itself. But there was some serious, this is now a legal issue because now the district attorney's office is involved and who knows what they know that they haven't told me. I just know it hasn't affected the accounts that I'm managing right now. You ever seen anything like that?
I unfortunately have quite frequently, and honestly, it can. Although that's not how we pay for long-term care nursing home, it's related to this whole topic of elder law and making sure we have plans in place. And what happens in that situation often is you got one child or one family member who's managing the money and taking care of things, and sometimes there really is no abuse, but to the outside kids, it looks like it is, and maybe it's the way they go about things. They're pooling money in their same checking accounts is what they are. With mom's money in this case might have been, so now it's in their account. It becomes very convoluted. And so I have seen those. And that's why I think doing the planning in advance, having plan, letting your family know who you've appointed to be in charge, how it's all set up can avoid it. So hopefully in this case, it'll turn out to be one that there is no abuse. Like I said, you haven't seen any, but somebody's raised a red flag that it appears they are, and they take those allegations seriously and they investigate.
Yeah, and it's gone past, a social worker. This is now at the, the Kansas State Attorney's Office, for this. So obviously there has to be some wrongdoing someplace to have gotten this far.
Yep. So
I'm just glad it hasn't affected all the investments and stuff that this client has with us. Are you ready to go live on this?
All right. Looks like we got people on. All right, so everybody, thank you for joining us for another weekly shot at this community cafe. So today, Mark Roberts and I are going to be talking about how to avoid going broke in a nursing home. And really, it's how to pay for long-term care when we need it. And we hope we don't need it, but statistics tell us at least, 7 out of 10 of us are going to need long-term care at some point in our life, and it's expensive. So there's various ways that we can pay for that. But the big thing is we need to be thinking in advance. We need to have a plan in place for when that time comes. We don't want to wait till we have one foot in the door at the nursing home to start doing our planning. There's still things we can do at that point, but we're never going to save as much money and have as good a plan as had we done planning in advance. So Mark, just why don't you talk a little bit about the ways that we can pay for insurance and some of the statistics that you see in this regards?
Well, let's just say, speaking in Kansas City, where I'm from, you can have a company own a long-term care facility on one part of town and have one cost, and just a few miles away, that same company has another community in town and at a very drastically different price. You just cross one side of the state line or one county into another. It's amazing how different the price can go. I've seen pricing be as probably on the high side of like $8,000 or $9,000 a month. And that doesn't even include the upfront price. A lot of times there's like a big down payment that has to be paid. And then I've also seen some communities where folks have gone into it where the cost is, well, just a lot less. I don't want to say it's more reasonable. It's a lot less, and it's in that $4,000 to $5,000 range. Either way, the cost of that care, having a roof over your head, basically no other bills, food's included, care is included. It's just going to cost a lot more than, let's say, a mortgage living in your own house, just because you're getting so much more. And so you got to plan ahead. I have personally seen examples over my 24-year career where people went into retirement with a lot of money, and by the time they passed away, there was very little left because one or both couple, of the husband and wife ended up in a nursing home and just spent it all down, and the kids didn't have much left over. So I've seen lots of scary stories on that, and price range is quite drastic. So I think we're going to talk today in Community Cafe about 4 scenarios of how to avoid going broke in a nursing home. One, we're going to talk about using Medicaid specialized planning, which Glenn will talk about here in a minute. We'll talk about the Pension Protection Act and how you can utilize an annuity and tax deductibility of a medical expense of long-term care to offset that as well. We're going to talk about self-pay, and we're going to talk about using like a long-term care policy or a life insurance that's got long-term care in it. Glenn, let's just start first with what I think is my favorite of the 4 is doing specialized legal planning, because out of all of the ways to prevent a long-term care spend down, going the route of Medicaid planning and doing special trust work through you is by far the cheapest of all the options, but yet it's also the broadest. But it requires more creativity on the legal side and the financial side to make it happen. So if you don't mind, let's start off talking about how you help folks through elder law planning, specifically how to use Medicaid to cover those costs.
Right. So, first of all, when we do Medicaid planning, we want to keep all those options open. All the options you talked about with paying for care, we keep those options open. So we're not locked into any one thing. But what we do is preparing ourselves. So if we choose to, we'll be able to avail ourselves of Medicaid insurance. It's one of these, when we do the planning, I always tell people that, it's one of those, we do the planning and hope we never need it. We hope we don't need that care. But statistically, as I said earlier, there's a good chance we're going to need it. So we just want to be prepared for this when the time comes. One of the big things, before I jump in, I think, and it's something I hear from people all the time, that, well, you don't want to go to Medicaid. The places that accept Medicaid are not where you want to be or where you want your loved ones to be. And people are surprised to find that's not necessarily true anymore. So I grew up in the nursing home environment. My mom was an activity director for a nursing home down in Emporia, Kansas, where I grew up. And she did everything she could to make life as enjoyable for those residents as she could, right? She was doing all kinds of crap, hauling us kids in to help out with this stuff. And so we spent a lot of time there. But this was the nursing homes of the 70s and 80s. Nobody wanted to be there. You were there because you had no other option. You go into these long-term care communities now, it's a different world. I mean, it is a different world. I was at one, to make a long story short, but I'd been there to get some documents signed by some clients who live at one here in Kansas City, and all kinds of activity, people playing cards. There was a group of women who had a book club, and the author of the book they just read was in to speak to them that day. I heard music off in the background. And as I was leaving the bus, this is at the atriums, which it's not skilled nursing, but assisted living and independent living. The bus pulled up, and I held the door open. It was all male residents were getting off the bus, and they were all smiling and happy, had their Korean War and World War II caps on. And I don't know, this was about 7-8 years ago. And the last guy in was the bus driver. And I said, it looks like they've had a good time. And he said, yeah, we just got back from Hooters. And the immediate thought I had in my head was just like, wow, my mom never took the residents to Hooters. But it hit me of what, these are vibrant communities. You have options to do so many things. And the states and the communities got smart as we started having these baby boomers age, and there wasn't enough space for them. They started building communities. Everybody wanted to get on. They built communities everywhere, and the states didn't have enough Medicaid beds. So now, these facilities don't have to be completely Medicaid. They can give preference to, private pay residents, and the communities like private pay because they can get more money. But there's a lot of nice communities out there now that will accept Medicaid. And so I've got some clients that live in really nice communities that accept Medicaid. So when we do the planning, we want to keep options open, but we want to be able to avail ourselves of that Medicaid insurance. We've been paying for it our entire working careers, and we want to be able to avail ourselves without having to go to the spend down. Because if we don't do the planning, it's very easy. I'll give everybody, this is the secret. You might want to write this down. If you can qualify for Medicaid without doing the planning, and it's not very hard to do. You spend all your money until you don't have any money, and then you qualify. But if you don't want to have to go through the spend down to $2,000 or less, because that is all you can have in assets, accountable assets, $2,000 or less. If you want to avoid that, you have to do the planning, and you need to do it at least 5 years in advance, right? So
let's clarify this real quick. We're talking about Medicaid, not Medicare. Everybody who's 65, who turns 65, Medicare becomes your health insurance, and Medicare doesn't really cover anything like that we're talking about with long-term care. This is Medicaid, which is state assistance healthcare, and Medicaid will pretty much pay for everything because technically you're broke. I mean, that's really the idea behind it, is you've spent everything down and you're broke. So the state comes in and pays for that. But there's also legal maneuvering done with specialized trusts to protect your assets, to put your assets into this trust, protect it in this trust, so that trust can go down to your kids when you're gone. The catch there is Glenn, it has to be in that trust for 5 years before Medicaid will come in and take care of any cost. So the point is, you got to plan ahead. And we don't know when we're going to go into a nursing home, but you just need to plan ahead, because you can't wait until you start needing to pay for care. Because if all of a sudden you go into a nursing home, oh, now I want to get one of those special trusts, you're going to self-pay for 5 years, waiting for that 5-year clock to get over with before the stuff that we put in that trust is then protected. But we lost 5 years of spending money down. So the sooner that people plan ahead of time is the bigger savings for them. Wouldn't you agree?
yeah, I mean, if they've waited until they've got 1 foot in the door at the nursing home, we didn't get 5 years. We don't necessarily have to wait 5 years, but we're never going to be able to avail ourselves of all the opportunities we had we done the planning 5 years. If we do the planning at least 5 years in advance before we need it, we can protect 100% of the money that we transfer to a trust. So if we talk about this, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about revocable trust, right? And I said, people think about it like a safe. We're building the family safe. We're putting assets in. With a revocable trust, then you as the trust maker keep the key and you can access anytime. With Medicaid planning, same safe. We build the safe, we put our assets in, but you got to give the key to somebody else. You cannot be your own trustee. We can give it to a trusted adult child. We can give it to, can't be the spouse, but anybody other than a spouse, we can give this key to somebody of our choosing. So we put our home into the trust. Well, we still live in the home. We got the right to occupy the home. But it's, instead of being held in our name, it's owned in the name of this family trust. Now, if we go to sell the home, we don't have the authority. We can't even force our trustee to sell it. Let's say it's our child, we can't force them. They can say, no, Dad, remember when I was 16 and I had that hot date and I wanted to borrow the car and you said no? Well, guess what? I'm not going to let you sell it. Now, you got two powerful strings. If they do that, you can say, well, I'm going to remove you as trustee. And not only that, you're no longer a beneficiary because you have the right to make those changes as trust. But I tell people, if you were worried that your kid was going to do that, you don't do this type of planning. You have to have somebody you trust. But you put the home in, you put everything in. We don't put everything in, right? I want my clients to be as independent as they can be, to have access to their checking account. We just may reduce the balance in those accounts. And it's where we spend money from. And that's where working with people like you, Mark, is so big, because we cannot put the IRAs, for example, into the trust without IRS saying that's a tax. You took a withdrawal the full amount. It's all going to be taxable to us. So
that's the problem, because the bulk of the people that are probably watching this webinar right now, and we have a huge following here today. So gosh, thank you very much for everybody following us here today. Hey guys, real quick, those of you who are following us on Facebook, would you share this just so other people have a chance to see this and this ends up in their news feed? Because this is a great topic. So if everybody wouldn't mind on their Facebook, just click share and share that with your group of friends and so on. But yeah, Glenn, this is costly stuff. Super costly.
It is extremely costly. And, when looking at the numbers in Kansas City, and you were talking about the cost of this earlier, average cost for assisted living in Kansas City is over $60,000. And for skilled nursing, over $90,000. I thought, wow, that seems a little bit high. Look into it. But then when you break it down to monthly, it's like, oh, well, no, that's like $70 $200 a month. They're about a little more than that, but 7,000 some a month. And I thought, well, I know many clients who are paying more than that. So it is expensive. And it's not like you write that check just 1 year. Every month that keeps coming in, and then the costs just continue to go up. So we've got to have a plan in place. So trust planning can be a big part of it, but it doesn't help us with our IRA. So that's where we look at things that I know you're big with. Can we, doing some Roth conversions ahead of time, so then when we get there, we've already swallowed that tax bill. We've managed those tax costs. And the other thing, and I'm sure you see this too, is where people spend from. Oftentimes, they should be spending from the IRAs, especially if they're paying for healthcare costs, deductible expenses. We can have tax-free withdrawals, and so many people miss this. They don't understand taxes. Their accountant's not giving them proactive advice on how they can minimize taxes. And so, it's just back to the thing. I tell people, even when we're, starting in our 50s, generally is where I tell people it's on our radar screen. We hope we never need long-term care, but we need to be thinking about it and looking for opportunities to do this planning in advance. And oftentimes there's really not pain involved with it. But trust planning is just one way that we can pay for that. And you brought up the others. We can use, the Pension Protection Act was the second one you brought up, with annuities. And, so many advisors don't even know about that. So where you can have tax-free withdrawals from your annuities to pay for qualifying.
Well, in all fairness, I'll comment on from my industry. The reason why a lot of financial advisors don't know anything about the Pension Protection Act is because it's using the word pension. And most people, when they associate the word pension, means I had a job someplace in my past and that job created a pension, and it doesn't affect that financial advisor because they're not selling anything. But no, the Pension Protection Act is actually goofy terminology for somebody who just wants to take any money, IRA type money, non-IRA type money, and they want to put it into an annuity and then use that annuity to create an income stream. That income stream is typically taxable to come out, depending on how it is, but it's typically taxable. But it's going to the cost of a nursing home to cover that cost. And the cost of that nursing home is tax deductible medical expenses. Therefore, that washes the taxable gain coming out. So it's a way to offset the taxes from that and get money out to cover that cost. Hey, Glenn, real quick, I'm seeing someone has posted a question here. Donna's asking the question is, are you required to take Medicare at 65 or can you continue to with work and private health insurance? Donna, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a Medicare expert. This is not a Medicare topic. This is more centered around Medicaid and long-term care, but I'll just tell you, typically when you get 65, you want to go in and apply for Medicare. And if you have a good health insurance plan, let's say at work, and it's very cost efficient, then typically your primary insurance at work becomes your primary insurance, and Medicare kind of becomes your backup. If you don't do that, and then later down the road, you try to go qualify for Medicare later, then you're going to have to probably qualify. Again, I'm not an expert on that, but you have to probably go back and qualify medically to then sign up for your Medicare. And then at that point, you may have cost issues because of pre-existing conditions. So there's a little window of time. I think it's 3 months before 65, 3 months after 65 birth date that you can qualify without any evidence of insurability. So I just want to throw that out there. Glenn, let me comment on self-pay because I think that's what most people do. So here's a way I try to describe this. Glenn, if you were to give me $20 to invest, I put $10 in one investment, I put $10 in this other investment. One $10 grows to 15, so it's made $5. The other $10 drops down to 8, it's lost 2. But you call me up and say, hey, Mark, I need a $3 withdrawal because I need to cover this month's nursing home costs. And I'm using very simple numbers, of course, but my $20 investment is now worth 23 because it's 15 and 8. So I would ask the client, where would you like me to get you $3 from? Do I take the $3 out of the $15 investment, or do I take the $3 out of the $8 investment? And I would tell you 9 times out of 10, folks will say to me, take it out of the $8 investment because that's my bad investment. It's my dog. It's doing worse. Let's leave my $15 investment alone so it can grow and grow and grow for the future. Now, as much common sense as that is, that's technically the wrong answer. You always want to lock in gains, not lock in losses. And it doesn't matter whether it's an IRA or a non-IRA type of an account. If I'm going to take something that's $8, take $3 out of an $8 investment that I paid $10 for it, I'm locking in a $2 loss. I'd rather lock in a $3 gain by taking money out of the $15 investments, what I'm trying to say. So the other example on that is you go to Walmart and you just found yourself this really cool sweater at Walmart and you paid $30 for the sweater. You're heading out the parking lot. run into somebody in the parking lot and says, oh my gosh, Glenn, I love that sweater. I'll give you $35 for it. Well, here you go. You sell them the sweater for 35 bucks. What do? Is you go back in the store, you buy yourself another $30 sweater and you pocket the $5 profit. But flipping it around is if you bought a $30 sweater at Walmart, you go out in the parking lot heading home and you run into a buddy who says, oh my God, I love that sweater, Glenn. I'll give you 25 bucks for it. You say, no, I just paid 30 bucks for it. You can go right in the store and get yourself one for 30 bucks because you're not going to sell it at 25, locking in a loss. My point by that little story there is I tell folks the number one way people eat through their money in retirement time, nursing home related or not nursing home related, the number one way is because they are taking their withdrawals from the wrong places at the wrong time. And anybody in retirement should have some sort of diversification, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, annuities. They got some kind of diversification. And right now, for folks taking withdrawals in retirement time or people who are needing a nursing home right now, and we're in this coronavirus environment and the market's down, they're asking me to take money out of something that's at a low point. And that means I'm locking in a loss. So right now, a perfect example, we talked about the Pension Protection Act. Right now is a great place to take income from those annuities that they have that are guaranteed principal protected annuities, because those annuities haven't made any money right now this year, but they haven't lost anything either. Their stocks, bonds, and mutual funds have lost a little bit, lost, gained, but they're still down. So I don't want to mess with those accounts. So like this year, right now, I would get money out of an annuity for somebody to spend. Whereas in 2019, stock market's going up, 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 up. Annuities are going up, let's say, but they're going up less. Everything else they have, stocks and bonds, are going up a lot higher. I'm going to take withdrawals from those. So it really depends on what the market's doing and what their diversification is doing to dictate where you take withdrawals, because the common flaw people have is they set up any of those accounts to take what's called a systematic withdrawal every month on the same day from the same investments from the same account every single month. And the problem with that is that's a way that eats through the portfolio. So if today is the 24th of the month, if the 24th is a good day today in the market, what's a good day to have money come out? If the 24th today is a bad day in the stock market, it's not a good day to take money out, because all the accounts know, oh, today's the 24th. It knows to go in and take money out and send it to the client so they can have their money. So you need some expertise involved in that on how you do a Pension Protection Act, or you do self-pay, as to how to take withdrawals, because taking withdrawals is taking withdrawals. It hurts the account. You don't help the account when you take money out, you hurt the account. So we show people how to take withdrawals the right way so that when you take a withdrawal, you're causing less harm in your portfolio.
Yeah, taking withdrawals or where you pay from. I mean, you're taking it from that pension to pay for your long-term care premiums when you're still well. Well, guess what? In the Pension Protection Act, that's a tax-free, because it's a qualifying long-term care expense to pay for that premium. And we can't itemize for most of us anymore. There's just things that, and that's where working with advisors like you who understand this stuff, Mark, is so key, because there's just so many who don't understand these things and don't know where to pull the money from and when to pull it, all those types of things. All right, so we've covered planning with trust, and by far that's going to give us the most bang for the buck as far as paying, giving us options, and
that's an irrevocable trust, not a revocable trust. For those watching, a lot of people have trusts. We're not referring to revocable or what's known as living trust. We're referring to irrevocable trust. And if that's something that's of interest to you, we can definitely hook you up with Glenn. You can talk to Glenn and talk about how to use your living trust that you have now and change that over to an irrevocable trust for later down the road.
Yeah, and just like for those people who do have revocable trust, you don't go about thinking about your trust on a regular basis. Same bank account, you live in the same home. It's just the home's title and the trust, the bank account. And when we use the irrevocable trust, you're not thinking about it. You will keep you independent of the trust. Life goes on pretty much as normal. It's titling issues, but it makes a huge difference. Mark, I think we should bring up one that for those of us that are veterans, right? That served in the military, wartime veterans and spouses of veterans, something that they may not know about, because the VA does a terrible job of.
You're talking about aid and attendance benefits?
Aid and attendance. We've got the VA pension benefits available. So just know, those of you who served in the military, active duty, during a period of war, or the spouses of those who served, you have a long-term care pension benefit that the general public does not have if you ever need long-term care. And it's real money. For a married veteran couple, it's over $2,200 a month of tax-free benefit from the VA to help pay for long-term care costs. So that's another way that we can help pay for that. So we covered paying using trust to do that, to avail ourselves of Medicaid. We talked about the Pension Protection Act. We can self-pay. We've saved all this money, we can pay, but at $90,000 a year, how many years can we do that? And here's what I always tell people when we're self-paying, and it's part of this planning. There's no right or wrong answers to this stuff. It's just, we need to think through it. Is I see so many couples, one, let's say husband goes in, had a stroke, ends up going into nursing care, and they don't do any planning. They don't get to see an attorney. They're not talking to their advisor. They're just paying it every month, just writing the check out of their checking account or taking out of their IRAs, wherever. They're paying this month after month after month. And they haven't done any planning. And by the time that, wife needs care, we've spent it all on husband. So, we got to do some planning. We can't just spend stuff until we don't have money. We need to be thinking in advance of how we're going to pay for it. But we could self-pay. It's a rainy day. We've saved for rainy days. We can pay for it. But as you said, well, let's think about when we're going to pay it, which bucket we pay it out of. The last one, and we've got a couple minutes here, long-term care insurance. And you brought up there's two primary types of insurance. So tell us about the long-term care insurance and how we can use that.
I'm going to tell you that my industry promotes us to want to sell long-term care insurance, because long-term care insurance is for long-term care. Pros and cons of long-term care insurance is, you sit down with somebody like myself and you go buy long-term care insurance and you have to qualify. The older you get, the more expensive it is. Your pre-existing conditions, smoker status, pills you take, height, weight, blood, all that kind of stuff all matters to get long-term care insurance. Now, you can be hopefully a fortunate person, qualify for long-term care insurance, live out your life, and then if you die, that long-term care insurance is just gone. No refund, in other words. But that's kind of what you hope for. And what you pay in premiums on long-term care insurance is way cheaper than self-pay out of pocket. It's pennies on a dollar, and that's because it's insurance. It's a pool of money. I'm not a big fan of that. I just had, in a 24-year career, I've had way too many people buy long-term care insurance from somebody, sometimes me, sometimes other people, and they died and never collected on it. And all those premiums are wasted. No benefit going to anybody. So insurance companies have actually gotten a lot more creative and more sophisticated, and insurance companies created a life insurance policy that's got a long-term care component attached to it. So it's life insurance. It has different underwriting guidelines. It's under the guidelines of life insurance. It's not under the guidelines of long-term care. So somebody, let's say with dementia, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to die quicker, but it does mean you're more expensive for long-term care. So it's easier to qualify for a life insurance policy than as a long-term care policy, is what I'm trying to say. So it's got life insurance. We live out our life, and when we die, the death benefit pays to our beneficiaries. But because it's got that long-term care component in it, if you end up going into a nursing home and needing some kind of care, money comes out tax-free of the policy to go for the cost of that care as well. And then the remaining death benefit gets paid out to the beneficiaries when you die. So either way, I'm going to pay premiums for a policy. It's a life insurance policy. First and foremost, it just has a rider built into it for a long-term care. So I'm guaranteed to collect on it if I go into a nursing home. My family's guaranteed to collect on it one way or the other through the death benefit. It's a lot more cost-efficient way to do that than to buy straight long-term care insurance. So that's another option. Tom in our office is the expert on that, and he's the one that maps out what insurance companies are doing. So anytime we have that request, I have people call and talk to me about it, then I end up referring them over to Tom to walk them through that and try to find what company out there has the cheapest premiums right now for the best coverages. But that's really our 5 options. You got using trusts, we have Pension Protection Act, we have VA planning, we have self-pay, and then we have long-term care insurance or life insurance with long-term care built into it to cover the cost of a nursing home.
Glenn, a combination of those, using
a combination. Yeah, you're right.
Because, and it just goes, we got to have a plan in place. And we talk about this in our, we do workshops around the city, on the web now, but still going around the city. And we talk about the 4 legs of the stool, and long-term care plan is a piece of that. We've got to have it on our radar screen. We've got to have a plan in place, because it can be not just financially devastating, it can be emotionally devastating to families when we don't have a plan in place. And the story that you were telling me about at the very beginning of this whole thing, where somebody's being investigated for, did they misuse mom's funds or whatever, And oftentimes it's another sibling who's seeing, I don't like what my sister's doing over here with the money, something looks fishy, and families fall apart. And had we had plans and appointed fiduciaries and had things clearly cut up in the accounts, we could have avoided all that. So we just got to get this planning done. There is no cookie cutter recipe, as there isn't in anything else really when it comes to the estate or financial planning world. It has to be individualized based on people and family. So
yeah, and that story that I started off with, the downside of it was this lady is my client and her best friend was my client, and the best friend was trying to get her over to see you to get the estate planning order, and I think got over to see you, but never followed up, never gotten back to you, never got you the statements and stuff that you needed. And dementia just kicked in and things kind of slowed down and just getting stuff done. Long story short, not only does she not have her estate plan done, not a will or a trust, but she doesn't have the power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for financial, no HIPAA release, just doesn't have those things. And now we have to go through a lot harder process because technically she's unable to make her own decisions with her dementia. So now somebody else has to step in, court appointed, to make those decisions for her. So we see that just because people don't want to plan, and she's only 73 for Pete's sakes. She's young.
We think we have time. And we punt it because it's too expensive. It's too complicated. I don't have time to deal with it now. Whatever her excuse was not to do the plan at the time, we punted. And she probably thought she had more time, but we don't always get second chances. I just encourage people, make sure you have a plan in place. Work with professionals who understand this stuff and get your plan in place. And it doesn't mean you necessarily have to use a irrevocable trust, but it needs to be on the table for consideration. And there's a lot of factors that go in whether or not it's appropriate for you. For a lot of people, it will be appropriate. But if not, what is our plan? Do we have insurance? Should we have it? Well, it's a cost benefit analysis. Do we have money to self-pay? Can we, use tax advantage planning now to make sure taxes aren't sucking away 30% of everything we have to how it's going to affect it. It's all just planning, Mark. And you and I talk about this on a daily basis. So sometimes
I hope we're not talking about anybody that's following us right now, because we got lots of stories with lots of folks. But hey, let me wrap this up real quick. Everybody that's on here, thanks for following us today. This is a fun topic. Glenn Stockton with Stockton and Stern, myself, Mark Roberts, Affinity Asset Management, our buddy Chris Tillman over at First Option Bank. The three of us came together and we created this idea called the Community Cafe. And it's because it's just sit down and listen to two guys chat that are industry professionals that refer business back and forth to each other for a variety of things that we can do to help folks. So we created this idea called Community Cafe, where we're not pitching products, we're not selling anything. It's just us talking and giving you guys a chance to kind of hear the insides of this. We are going to be doing this in such a way through Facebook and through Zoom. So on Zoom, we have to invite you by sending you an email that will have the link on it. We just need to know that you want that. Or you can follow us on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page called the Community Cafe. We do this every Wednesday at 8 a.m. So do me a favor, go to our Facebook page on Community Cafe, because technically that is a business page. So I can't request you to be my friend. We can do that personally on our personal Facebooks. And I'm looking at a lot of names. A lot of you guys are personal friends of mine on Facebook. But go to the Community Cafe Facebook and like that. So that way it pops up automatically in your newsfeed and it'll remind you of this. And you see the topic and it's a topic that's of interest to you, hop on and listen in. Plus it's going to show up in the newsfeed so you can watch it later if you don't get to watch it all. If it's a topic that's not of interest to you, you can still share it and share it to your world, to your people that you're friends with on Facebook, because there's a lot of other people out there that could benefit from that. So this is something that we plan to be doing for a long time. We have a lot of topics to talk about, but there's always going to be two of the three of us on here. And next week, which will be July 1st, the week of 4th of July, I'm going to be doing this one by myself with somebody in my office. And so no Glenn this time. We'll give Glenn a week off. Chris Tillman is off in Colorado on a 3-week hiking trip, hiking across the state of Colorado. So I'm going to be talking on tax strategies. Specifically, while we're alive, what can we do to save income taxes while we're alive? It's how to be proactive. It's how to think of the future. And I'm not talking about how you could use an accountant about how you save taxes on last year's tax return. I'm talking about helping you save taxes on the next 20 years of your tax return. So that's what our topic's going to be next week. So like our Facebook page so you can follow it. Glenn, thank you so much for the introduction. Thanks for joining us here today. Any last minute comments before we exit
Well,
off?
I just think, each of those things, if we're talking about trust planning for long-term care planning or long-term care insurance, each of these topics could have a community cafe subject of themselves. I mean, there's so much, and maybe that's something we'll think about in the future, coming back and visiting these topics, because you're just scratching the surface in a 30-minute to talk about those. But no, I think it's something I'm certainly passionate about. Mark, thank you for being part of it today, and everybody have a great day.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Glenn. Everybody be safe, be healthy, go Chiefs.
Take care.